Good morning and welcome to the Field Report. Today is Tuesday, December 18th, 2012. The big topic today, and has been for the last couple of days, is the shooting in Connecticut. Being as we've been off line and off air, we're not going to cover too much on the topic in the news until the beginning or next week, I believe. We're going to touch on the topic, though, that has been described as gun control, and also the combination of that conversation along with mental illness. Now, the debates are pretty real. They're personal. So, with all due respect, we don't want to make any personal remarks regarding what it is to demonize topics or demonize anyone regarding gun control or mental illness. The two, in fact, are being used in this context because, in fact, in Connecticut, that what has been described as the shooter, that mental illness and gun control are the biggest topics today. So let's touch on some topics regarding the mental illness issue. Unfortunately, the topic mental illness is broad. You can narrow it down to a couple things regarding the incident that happened in Connecticut. That mental illness did play a role in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone with a mental illness is going to go shooting people, much less killing innocent children. So that being said, this is where the topic needs to narrow over into a more specific area. Now, what are the signs of somebody that's going to commit mass murder? Well, it's not something common. So let's say that, let's just get the people that have mental illness, quote unquote, off the hook. Not everybody with a mental illness is going to go committing a murder. So, unfortunately, that's the topic that has been described as, well, unfortunately, with people who have mental illness, that could cover a broad area. So, with all due respect, we hear in the media and we see in the public eye that anyone with a mental illness, automatically the assumption is made that they're going to go hurt someone is wrong, and it's not true. Unfortunately, there's such a degenerative society that we overlook a lot of those things, the important details and the topics. Now, somebody who's going to commit murder or mass murder, it's not specific, but a danger to society is a broad topic in itself. Now, unfortunately, that topic is overshadowed along with the gun control issue. So now you see what's happening in the discussion that you're hearing in the media around many circles, that somebody with a mental illness is going to go commit mass murder, which is so not true. So that's the topic that needs to kind of redirect itself. Now, somebody who commits mass murder in the case of the Connecticut shooting at the school in Connecticut, unfortunately, that was a very, very rare situation. We all know that this is not something that happens, and it's not common. And even though that there has been mass school shootings, it's still very rare. It should not immobilize you from life. It should not dissociate you from living. Unfortunately, in this case, these are kids, which don't have the reason and understanding that maybe as an adult would have. But again, this is not to diminish or even marginalize or even minimize the necessity of safety for our schools and our public and anything that we do in a public arena. So unfortunately, this is a very, very broad topic, but to bring it up in the media like it is being brought up in, unfortunately, you're only going to get an angle or a topic regarding mental illness, and of course it's very negative. So unfortunately, mental illness again is a bad word, and has been. It's been one of those things in our society has been often looked at or even kind of looked down at, and unfortunately there's a lot of people who suffer in silence and don't get treatment because of that reason. So once we get past the ugly side of all this and we can really fix this problem, then we could really see real positive things come of this. But as long as the conversation around mental illness is a constant negative, it further pushes this discussion away from really getting something positive accomplished. And that's very sad, because we don't want to see another school shooting occur that is provoked because people have made mental illness the bad word. And again, it's part of our society. We have many millions of people who suffer from depression, all kinds of dissociative disorders, and most of it is caused by situations, apparently, from the way it's stated, by life situations. So to say that mental illness is something that people want to have is unfair. It's almost a form of leprosy in our society to have mental illness. So again, it makes the topic very hard to discuss, especially when you're talking about something as devastating as a school shooting. And for that, we hope that we can get into a discussion that would not further push people away from receiving the necessity they need and the help that this is available to them. Unfortunately, again, the topic around the school shooting makes mental illness, again, a very bad word. And that's not to minimize the massacre and the shooting. That's a whole other discussion that we must have. And mental illness, again, is the topic of the conversation regarding the school shooting. And as we move away from that discussion, we also are going to talk about gun control, and we're going to elaborate a little bit more about that. Now, gun control, it's a confusing topic for some people, because on one hand, you want to be safe and you don't want people to ever be in danger. In this case, the school shooting is a great example. You would want people to be able to defend themselves. In a case like this, maybe that teacher who put her own life in the path of the shooter who died could be alive today had she been able to carry a firearm. I mean, these people are willing to put their own lives in danger. Why not allow those type of people be able to carry a gun to protect their students? In the case of Victoria DeSoto, she put her life in the line, and along with 6 other children who died as the shooter narrowed in and shot her and 6 other students. But in fact, she saved 6 other students in that class as a result. So let's take that as an example. Now, that's somebody who should have been able to carry a gun. If she was willing to put her own life in jeopardy, isn't this somebody that you would want to be able to trust to carry a gun? If she's willing to put her own life in danger to save kids? Again, gun control is a really complicated debate. I would hate to say it's confusing, but it's a complicated debate, because in these cases, in that specific case, a teacher should be allowed to carry a gun to defend herself and the 6 other students that did in fact pass away. And that's a discussion that we need to have. And we're going to have a meaningful discussion. Let's have a meaningful discussion about it. In the case of somebody who's been assaulted or been abused or even stalked, this again, a gun is the difference of your life and your sanity and your safety. Truthfully, nobody wants to ever have to use a gun, even in these cases. Most people look at guns as more of a hobby and a sportsman-like type of thing. And unfortunately, even in those cases, there are accidents that happen. People who are not trained can sometimes shoot themselves accidentally. And sometimes, in some cases, they could shoot, somebody on a range. It's rare, it never happens. But if it ever does, it's because, again, somebody's not trained. Training and all the laws that you have to go through to pass the required responsibilities and rights that go with owning and purchasing a gun are in fact very important, because without those laws you wouldn't be able to carry, in some cases, in some states, you would not be able to carry a gun, much less be able to use it. But in some states, again, you can have a gun in your house for self-protection. Again, it's not something people want to do. In a case of self-protection, you would not want to use it. But if it's the difference between your life and the intruder's life, and believe me, what other solution you have if you're in serious jeopardy? Okay, so that being the serious part of the gun control debate, we could elaborate a little bit more, but we're only short with time. Another part of the topic about the gun control debate, you don't want guns to get in the wrong hands. That's why the laws that are right now in place and the gun laws that are not being enforced, more or less, need to be enforced. So the laws are on the books to protect the safety of others. Guns are not bad. Okay, this is the word that you hear. Guns are not bad. It's the people that use them. Again, this is a very, very important topic, and we need to narrow it down. What is about guns that are so bad? Well, okay, that's the language that they use in the media, and that's the language that you hear. But truthfully, there's another part of that debate that is very, very important to people who own and use guns as a hobby. Those are the people that are often attacked. They're the ones that are most trained to use a firearm. And unfortunately, you're talking about different types of categories of gun owners. Most gun owners are, in fact, sportsmen. They do it for a hobby. They hunt in those cases, and they're trained. Most people do it for the job as a security or in police law enforcement. So that's the other aspect. When I first learned how to use a gun in the military, I know for a fact that one of the things that was really hard for me to overcome is that this piece of equipment is in fact more or less hard to operate if you don't know what you're doing, and it is scary. But once you're trained, it makes you feel a lot more comfortable, and carrying a firearm is really a tool. And I didn't really look at it that when I first had it. Was, of course, during training it's required, and I had to get used to the idea of having to carry a gun everywhere. But in the military, that being the case, you have to. And it taught me the responsibility involved. And it is a big responsibility, believe me, to own and operate, carry a large assault weapon. And in the military, that being the case, it's not something I would carry around every day. I mean, it's not necessary. We don't need assault weapons on a day-to-day basis. If you're just an everyday person, a small handgun for self-protection, that's another story. But we're looking at that topic, gun control, because we want to talk about the different types of people who own and operate a gun. Those are the people that primarily are legally allowed to carry and have a registered gun and have the accessibility to use and operate a firearm on a day-to-day basis. Now, in the cases of people who own or purchase a gun for the fact that they're going to hurt or commit any kind of crime, that's a whole different category. You're talking about criminals then. Okay, so that being the discussion, we're going to elaborate a little bit more on that. We really thank you for listening to our kind of version on the Field Report here for Tuesday, December 18th, 2012. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.